This is Geeks Represents, where we talk about representation and issues that matter to us geeks. We are
Daryl,
Sean,
Marshall,
and Joe. Growing up in the 90s, when you turn on the TV at primetime, chances were you'd see very few people of color. For many, it was considered diverse if you had one black guy in the cast, if there was one at all. But as time went on, we started seeing awesome shows that reminded us stories didn't have to be about white people to be successful. Let's talk about the groundbreaking shows for people of color. So, geeks, why do you think it's so important to have people of color, not just guests, but actually be featured or starring on TV?
I mean, I think it's very important because it kind of like humanizes minorities by like showing that we're normal people too. We're not bound by the stereotypes that people are familiar with. And I think it just goes to show that we're all like human, you know?
I agree with that, but I also liked it for the fact that when I was growing up, I could say like, hey, that person looks just like me on the TV versus like going to my friend's house and it's like watching Friends or Saved by the Bell. And I'm like, I don't see anyone that represents me. But when I watch like certain shows like Steve Harvey show, I'm like, hey, that guy reminds me of me. So that's just my take.
Yeah, it better reflects the world that more people actually live in. And it's great to see just examples of like people that look like you, even though you can identify with people that still act some similarly, or most characters have some aspects that you can find yourself in. But the little extra of him, like that guy looks like me. He can do some of the awesome things that they're doing on TV, or this is a person that looks like me. Maybe they're heading into some trouble that I should avoid, and things like that. Like not being the last person in the basement when there's like a killer on the loose or something like that.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. That said, it's also nice to see like your own culture too, like just elements and stuff. So you realize like, oh, the things that I'm doing with my family, it's not just us. There's like a whole community of us that are doing it. And it's pretty cool to see that as well.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys want to see something, so I saw recently there was a documentary on Netflix called "This Changes Everything," and I kind of think Tiffany Haddish says it best. Is actually in a trailer too. She it's all very informative, but she was talking about how she was watching an episode of Dynasty, right, when she was young, and it was the first time she saw a black woman who wasn't from the hood or wasn't poor or wasn't a crackhead or something. It was a rich woman, and she couldn't believe that this rich black woman would start talking assertively to a white woman like an equal. And then they actually get they get into a fight and start like, fist fighting each other. And she's like, she's not going to jail. She's allowed to do this. And she said that was the moment that she felt like she can do anything. And I think that's why, like all you said, that it's important for people to see reflections of themselves, both inwards and outwards, featured on TV and normalized like they belong to this community, or they don't just fit in this box that other people wish they were in. But yeah. So with that being said, what shows broke new ground for you growing up?
Like I mentioned earlier, the Steve Harvey show, I just remember watching that with my dad and my mom just because it was prime time and we didn't know what to watch. My dad turned it on, like, what's this? He's like, this is one of the kings of comedy. And I was like, I've never heard of him. So it was literally just about Steve Harvey being an assistant principal at an underprivileged high school. And he was just being funny and having to deal with certain scenarios that, you wouldn't really see like on other mainstream shows like Friends or whatever. But he had like a funny way to make it just hilarious.
You brought up Friends before, and I keep thinking like all 10 seasons. How many romantic interests have there been? And they all dated Ross at some point.
They literally just were recycling, and I'm like, that's just nah.
I can't name the Asian lady, but I remember like, Aisha Tyler and Gabrielle Union, and Gabrielle Union was just for that one episode, and that was it. And I was
she was just
diversity,
like, bam.
Right. And then the Chinese girl whose English sucked, I guess. I don't know.
I remember her show name was like Emily or something.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
Yeah, another one I liked was the show Martin. It was another comedian, and it was just literally starring Martin and all its antics. And one of his buddies brought a white woman to a ski trip, and he's like, "You ain't tell me this girl was so tall." It's like, "No, you upset because Aquanetta is white?" I'm like, "No, I'm just upset that her name Aquanetta, and she is white, so yes."
Didn't they use that exact same joke in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when like one of Will's aunts brought home a white dude?
Yeah,
and they were
and
like,
now you see that boy white. I know a lot of tall people. Yeah, I work with some tall people. Boy, that man is white.
Classic.
Both
of them. Martin and Fresh Prince. Martin's definitely classic.
For sure.
Shoot.
Yeah.
So I want to highlight another show that definitely a staple of the 90s, which is Family Matters.
Ooh, yep.
Is it a rare condition?
In this day and age, just read any good news on the newspaper page.
Such a solid opening song.
Yeah.
Like, give me time, I can go through the whole set of lyrics. But yeah. I mean, the first couple seasons, it was just a black family trying to make it through, deal with issues with raising all those kids. And then they introduced the nerdy neighbor.
Yeah.
Steve Urkel coming in.
Did I do that?
And Urkel Mania was a thing.
Yeah. I remember when he transformed into Bruce Lee, and that was awesome.
Yeah. With the eyebrows and every movement was cracking a muscle.
Like, I really like the connection between that, like the homage to like Bruce Lee and Kung Fu culture and stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
It was so cool to see, like Family Matters showing like an upstanding black family, and then all these other cultures and stuff that they shared too. It was dope. And Urkel being a nerd, that was awesome to have representation where he was like cool still. And then even like his character, him versus Stefan, and then him eventually like being the one who wins out in the end too. That was a cool like character arc development for sure.
Oh yeah. Speaking of, it really is true. Like, you know what they say, rising tides, or a rising tide raises all ships, right? Because I feel like once you have a solid, like growing up, there were a lot more shows featuring black people, right, about black families, and the one that stuck with me was Hanging with Mr. Cooper, which I grew up loving. For those who don't remember, you know, about he was like a former like NBA star, right, or whatever.
Like so.
And he became a basketball coach and a teacher at a school. And a particular episode I remember featured, and he will be brought up again later tonight, Dante Basco as one of his students, right? And I thought that was really cool. And it wasn't just like another dorky Asian kid. Right, like he was a basketball player. He was good at it. He wanted to play basketball, and I felt very seen and very like, because his parents didn't want him to. They thought it was a distraction from like his academics, even though he was extremely talented as a player. And I just thought that was really cool. Just had that shown, and then he was seen again in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as. Again, unstereotyped, because he was Ashley's boyfriend for an episode, and he was dumb as a rock. Like, he was not the scientist. He was not like the geeky Asian kid in school. Again, like what Will was like, "Hey, what's up?" And he was just like, "I don't know." What? And Ashley's just like, "I don't see you splitting atoms." I was like, yeah, it's awesome. And funnily enough, it also reminds me of another show. I don't know if anyone grew up watching this. It was like City Guys. A little on the nose, but it was about like, this black kid from the inner city and a relationship with him and his like white rich friend, whatever. But what I'm talking about is like there was another pair of friends. It was a short Asian guy and a tall black dude. And again, like he wasn't like the nerd. He actually like starts dating the white nerdy girl, which was already a big deal. It was like, oh, like someone who's not Asian interested in this Filipino guy. And again, it's just, and they were all like friends with each other. It was a multicultural group. And I think that started solidifying like later on for me that like, maybe it's okay to have friends who are not of the same race, or different backgrounds. Like this is normalized,
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, that was Dante Bosco's brother. So,
all right.
That family's just monopolizing all the diversity in the 90s. Asian
They're
diversity in the
holding
90s.
it down.
Mm-hmm.
Super hard. Yeah. Like, I mean, other than that, there's like Sister, Smart Guy,
Mhm.
like Living Single. In addition to being like awesome at just great representation and awesome like lessons and life stories, they were just entertaining as hell. Like,
Oh yeah,
they were so good, man.
Mm-hmm.
we are living.
Like they were objectively good. So like,
Oh yeah, for sure. That was what Friends should have. It makes more sense. Like,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
that's like normal New York life.
right.
Mm.
Still remember, I think, what was it? Master of None pointed that out. Like they were like that episode where it was just about different people of color in New York was made because like shows like Friends and Sex and the City. It was like that's not representing New York at all, unless you're from like the rich areas, I guess. And even then, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it still doesn't make sense.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Like how could you just interact only with white people when you're in New York? That's like hard as hell, man.
I'm sure people do. Honestly, though, I'm sure people do.
Yeah.
Well, fair.
Yeah.
Sadly fair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, another show Dante Bosco was Proud Family. There you go.
Yep.
Proud Family was great for everyone. Has anyone been watching the new show? The new the reboot?
I haven't yet.
No, not yet.
It's so
sadly.
fucking funny. I feel like it's a little more mature too because it's on Disney Plus exclusively. I don't think it's airing on like Disney Channel or anything like that. But I feel like maybe I need to rewatch some old Proud Family episodes because the humor is a little more. I don't know. Maybe it flew over my head, but the humor is a little more adult than I remember.
Oh yeah, some of it's pretty. Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Mama!
I feel like cartoons tend to try to sneak it in. So as a
True.
kid, we probably a lot flew over for sure.
Mhm.
Especially during the 90s and
Oh,
stuff. There was
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot that flew over our heads.
Can't help but wonder about Jackie Chan Adventures. Watching that, I was like, how many things
Oh, yeah.
are true? Because there were so,
I mean,
like
I
you said,
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But like you said, there were so many homages to like old school films, right?
Yeah.
Like they had that whole
Yeah,
episode based on
nothing.
Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
Viper slipped in some shit. So,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, like watching these shows growing up, like it helped for sure, especially through like a lens of not being like black. To watch these shows was like super dope in like terms of helping me understand too, like the culture and being able to even just like bond better with like my black friends and stuff like that growing up, like
Mhm.
it's not really something that I would be taught as an Asian American. So having some insight like this, especially when they did such a good job at representing different facets of it all too, like Fresh Prince, they're dealing with like people from Philly versus people from Bel Air.
Yeah, right.
Like, completely different stuff, but there's still something that unites it all. Like it was super, super, super awesome to grow up on for sure.
Speaking as someone who almost exclusively went to like all white affluent like Catholic schools, that was extremely important. Just
Oh yeah, that made it more relatable because we both went to Catholic school.
Yeah. like not just for our own cultures, but like just seeing other cultures that weren't just, you know, Irish or Italian American, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And then like growing up on Jackie Chan adventures, for me, that was super dope to see too. 'Cause before then, like the only like Asians I would ever see on TV was maybe in Power Rangers, but that was only like a few of them. Not like
that was a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big deal. But yeah, like Jackie Chan to get his own like TV series, especially when I was already a Jackie Chan fan growing up on Kung Fu movies. I was like, yes, now everyone gets to know about it. And then that allowed everyone else to see more into like Asian culture and like even bond with that, especially when you'd see people play with the talismans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They were so cool.
The talismans were awesome.
And then Uncle was awesome.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who doesn't know? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
because that's such a thing that my family would say all the time every time we like. So it was awesome.
or constantly nag you like
Yeah.
one more thing.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and watching it through like Jade's eyes too, you know, like she just wants to, you know, like you can relate to that. Like she just wanted to be assimilated into American culture, but at the same time was very proud of where she came from.
For sure.
So that was important.
And then
We can't not mention Avatar, the phenomenon that is Avatar.
Leading into later in the 2000s, then we got boom, Avatar. That was
It just made, even though it didn't exclusively take place in Asia, it just made being Asian super cool, right?
Yeah. And it's crazy because it wasn't really written by Asian writers.
No.
Yeah, it was just a American animation that like really killed it. Like really paid respects to just traditions, really, and even made it open for like everyone else to like join in and feel included as well.
Yeah, everyone can get immersed in it.
Yeah, I think respect is the key word you keyed into there, because you can try and cram in characters from any descent and their background could not have a factor in the show or in the character that they have, or in this case, the type of world that is being built. But Avatar wore its influences on its sleeve, and if you want to dig a little deeper into where they all came from, it's valuable.
Yeah. I mean, they actually studied it, right? Like, if you look closely, they made it pretty plain obvious that, you know, like the bending styles, for example, were each actual based on real martial arts, and they're all distinct. Yeah,
exactly what I'm thinking.
And like the architecture and calligraphy, and all that.
And then Toph's is completely different due to how she was raised and how she learned it.
Yeah. I think it was like Hungar, right? And like, which is based on a lot of like leg sweeps and like leg movements, which is perfect for a blind person who sees through their feet.
Yeah, being very grounded and like
grounded.
It made it really cool too that like like Asian culture wasn't just a monolith. Like there's so many different types as well. So it was nice to see that open things up too.
Yeah, like even like when they saw the Sun Warriors, wasn't that really like based on like, you know, the South Pacific, like Pacific Islander culture, not just like mainland or, you know, the Asian cultures that everyone is aware of, you know.
Yeah. And like all the series that we mentioned so far also had like amazing freaking female leads, man, or female characters, like well written as well. Like, man, Queen Latifah, I mean, that whole show, all of them were strong as crap, like hella awesome leads, but like Queen Latifah killed it, man. Being like that strong boss lady that she was.
It also reminds me of, you know, like again, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, do you remember how formidable, no offense to second Aunt Viv, but first Aunt Viv, like how formidable she was. She commanded respect but she wasn't. But you forget that she was also from Philadelphia, so she can scrap it if she wants to.
Yeah.
So she acts all like classy. But I remember like what Ashley's bully's parents showed up, and like one of us a psychologist or something, and said like, oh, like, you know, Ashley exhibits like such and such, and they're like, are those words too big for you? And she's like, I got a few small words for you.
She schooled the crap out of them, man.
Oh yeah.
They had so many good moments like that, and then even with her dancing too. Like,
oh yeah.
That was
when she
amazing.
owned it.
Yeah.
Such a shame. Again, I like second Aunt Viv, but first Aunt Viv was good.
Yeah.
She didn't have as much of an impact, I would say.
No, because they kind of focus on her being what, like her mom, like, you know, a new mom to Nikki, but that was about it. But yeah. I kind of fell off of it, but did anyone really watch like Fresh Off the Boat too? Because that was really the first successful Asian sitcom
until later in life. But
yeah,
I did. After watching it, I definitely appreciated why it came out. I mean, what it did, and man, it came out during like a brave time when it came out.
Oh yeah,
it was like hecka early. Like looking back in terms of like the context of when it came out, Fresh Off the Boat was ambitious, and they did well. I gotta say, even if they probably didn't receive as much of the accolades as they should have back then, I think it was necessary for sure.
Oh yeah, just help get the ball rolling, and also, you know, again, the things we could relate to, like, Mom, why does the dishes dryer have buttons on it? No, I was like, oh god, use that washing machine. Why did you get it?
Yeah,
or
that and just chasing the American dream.
Oh yeah.
By pretending to be American.
Yeah. Still remember, like, you're like, Mom, you bought my clothes again? Oh, don't worry. I got you the clothes with the black men on them. And Nick pulls out the Reading Rainbow.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I really wish I had something like that growing up. Which kind of leads into our next question. What shows could have been groundbreaking, but either failed or didn't even try for y'all? Because there's three in mind, but I want, you know, if there was any like shows that, you know, you thought didn't take the risk enough. Like even Sean, you mentioned like Fresh Off the Boat, like it didn't win as much accolades, which it definitely doesn't really mean it didn't deserve any, but maybe that meant it didn't get as widespread as it could have.
Yeah, I mean, initially the reason why I didn't want to watch it as a kid was because I was like, they're just gonna play off of like stereotypes and stuff like that and represent us poorly.
Which they kind of did.
I mean, they did, and then, but after watching it, I realized they did it in a way that like made sense. It's like it gave context to like, all right, this is what we need to do and whatnot. I thought it was just a show that was just gonna poke fun at it the entire time, but it did at least like push, I think, in a good way, for sure.
It did it with respect. Yeah. Even if it pointed out some of the stereotypes that are absurd.
Yeah.
Like 5-finger discount. Good deal.
Yeah, watching it now, I'm like, I understand. This, yeah. I could laugh at those things now.
True.
Yeah. Growing up.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I mentioned that it wasn't the first Asian sitcom, right? So, like you said, it was a big risk because the first one was All American Girl with Margaret Cho. And that failed hard for the reasons that you mentioned, you know, that like leaning heavily into the stereotypes for a laugh, like not really treating Asian culture with respect and overall just not being that funny, you know, which sucked because you see a lot of the actors, like you see it everywhere else. Like Margaret Cho herself is a pretty decent comedian herself, right? And, and you see the actors go off into other things. Like I think the one that played the mom, sorry, I just started like she was in Blackish, and also like she was Mason's grandma, like their Asian friend's grandmother. And the first time she meets Ruby, the matriarch of the Johnson family, Ruby straight up in the middle of an episode is like, I think I saw you during the Rodney King riots. Right? Like the animosity between the Korean and Black communities. But then at the end and you're like, that's messed up. But then by the end of the episode, she like the Korean grandma goes up to Ruby's face and it goes, I was the one who pulled the gun at you. It's like, what the hell? It's like, what? I'm not sure how respectful that is, but it was tastefully done. It was funny as hell.
Yeah.
Good reference, at least. Informative.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just saying. But it's not like it ruined like the actors' careers. I'm glad like the Asian actors, they went off to do other things, and then again, like they tried again with Fresh Off the Boat. It was decently successful, and now you have other shows like Nora from Queens, right? Aquafina's Nora from Queens, and helped. But yeah, like I said, All American Girl didn't work out well, and then even older, there was also Kung Fu, which was originally seeded by Bruce Lee, right? Like it was pretty much like his concept, and then they went up and hired David Carradine, a white guy, instead, like as character. And I was like, that's fucked up, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. So there was that.
Yeah, there was like a big gap, I guess, for me, or rather, I wasn't familiar with any like Asian shows, mainly because I guess there weren't really any.
There weren't really any.
I couldn't. I can't really comment on ones that kind of failed.
Yeah,
mainly because
like,
there weren't really.
I mean, even like it was mentioned before, like Friends and Saved by the Bell, which I guess I was thinking about that. It kind of was in its own way towards Black people, like between like Black and white people, because like as much as it fell into archetypes, like that's the nerd, that's the jock, those are the popular kids, they didn't really play into racial stereotypes. So like Lisa being like the only Black character on the show, being like the rich Valley girl, right? And like any Black character, any love interest that she was with, they tended to be like, I remember one, like he was a nerd, right? Like it, or like it didn't fall into like the stereotypes you expect from a school taking place in like the Los Angeles area, right? That being said, most of the Asian characters you see were all nerds, so it kind of failed in that aspect. Maybe like because there weren't any like enough Asian writers, maybe, or people with respect to the Asian community and shows like that. And then like again, like with Friends, and like they could have taken the opportunity, or How I Met Your Mother, which surprisingly actually has like a very large Asian like writing staff, but like the main cast, they were all white, and I think only Barney and Robin like dated people of Asian descent once. Like it was like Nora and Cal Penn.
Yeah.
So
never would have known about the writing staff, at least.
And then John Cho randomly was in there, but it's just because it's John Cho. He's awesome.
Yeah. I just want him to have a long running leading role in a show.
You got a show in mind that you were thinking of?
Well, I mean, I did shockingly to myself enjoy Selfie when it came out. Like part of it was as like I was a fresh Doctor Who fan, and I saw Karen Gillan in the TV show in the States, and I was like, oh, cool. I was like, but eventually, like after watching that half season it got,
so sad.
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny cast, and I really enjoyed the characters, but it just didn't land.
Maybe he's cursed because well, no fault to his own. He's a great actor, but like it's not the first show that he was like the leading or like the love interest in a non-Asian coupling that got canceled. One thing about it was like I think it was Flashpoint, where he was one half of a coupling with Gabrielle Union.
Oh, okay.
And that didn't last. So, and then you saw what happened with Cowboy Bebop. So
yeah, still haven't seen it, but I wish it got better reviews.
Yeah, me too. Now that being said, now we're going to get into the deep question here. What do you think about the sentiment that TV has become too diverse? You know, or like straight white men are being sidelined. You know, they're just filling a diversity quota, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, don't watch the show then. There's so much stuff to watch out there for you to complain about. Like, let us have our shows that represent us. And it's like, it's not like they're just doing it to be diverse. It's usually good writing behind it, good acting and everything is still like an even playing field, you know?
Yeah. I remember hearing or someone saying like, but by sometimes of its force, like the diversity seems forced and it ruins the show. I'm like, the solution to that isn't to get rid of them, is to make more of them, because crappy writing is crappy writing, diverse or not.
Agreed.
And if it does feel forced, that's the result of, you know, shitty writers.
Yeah.
But yeah, that doesn't mean not try.
Yeah.
So. And people that are like not white have been watching shows with white characters and white actors for the history of TV.
Right.
So
they still do.
And a lot of them are trash.
Well, that's the thing. Like, there are still amazing, like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, for example. Those are amazing shows. If you're so gung ho about like diversity, it's like you still got those, right?
Yeah.
You still got like 75% of of like the best award-winning TV shows.
But like we could, like, as people of color, we can still identify with characters and plights and plots within those shows. Doesn't mean that white. It doesn't mean that white people can't relate to some aspects of primarily diverse shows, you know?
Maybe they never learned to.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
like,
they didn't have to.
Everyone else has. Yeah, they didn't have to, so they didn't have. So, but you know, as an Asian, I grew up watching, you know, like again, like Friends, Saved by the Bell, like Night Court, Full House, and it was easy enough for me to relate to people that don't look like me.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe white people in particular are just like who are against diversity. They're just out of practice. Like they never had, like you said, they never had to.
Yeah.
And it's a new concept, which is hard for us to understand because we grew up with that shit.
Yeah. It's not that big of a bridge to cross.
Right.
like we're humans too, man. Like, I fucking love Lord of the Rings. That shit is white as fuck.
Right.
But like,
not anymore. Have you seen the trailers and people throwing shit like black elves? Like, and
it's like, it wasn't that hard to cross that there be just white elves. Like, come on, man. It's sunny everywhere all the time in Elven land.
Yeah, right.
Someone's got to get a tan.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I mean,
and not just the orcs either.
Yeah.
I saw the only black people in the first one were orcs.
Well, the people who wrote elephants were also black in the later movies because they were supposed to be from. This is going to be a little loaded,
Orient.
but the South.
Oh, the South. Yeah.
Because like it's supposed to be like fantasy England, so they're like North African people, technically.
Yeah. Right.
But
then why did they call it Middle Earth, Daryl?
It's the middle period of Earth.
Again, Earth. That's what it's supposed to you more to people who are like, it's the whole world. You can't expect everyone to be of the same race amongst different species as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as you said, like, as bad writing is bad writing no matter where you are, and like when you don't have as much of the opportunity to have it, and your stuff basically gets canned right away, it kind of puts a lot of pressure for you to like, you would only see that or whatnot, and like a very few good stuff. But as there's more, I guess, diverse content coming out, it's
diverse choices.
Yeah, diverse choices is gonna make it like people are just gonna have more chances to practice and more chances to get ideas out and see what actually sticks. And then Hollywood is like a machine; like it sees what works and it's just gonna keep peddling it out, and they'll see that it works too.
Yeah. It kind of sucks because it kind of adds more pressure for it to succeed, right? Like, can you imagine if like Black Panther didn't succeed, right? Marvel would be like, we'd never have a black superhero again. Like, you know, or
he just literally wounded my heart at the thought of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But like, that's something that us as minorities have dealt with all the time. There's that extra standard. 100% isn't enough.
You know how much I was crossing my fingers for like Shang-Chi? I was like, please don't suck. Please don't suck.
Yeah,
we're never going to get this
again. So hoping that it would not suck. I'm like, this is better. Fucking kill it. Like,
we don't got a lot. Please give us this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, the other commentary I get is like, it doesn't add to the story. And I'm like, does being white add to the story most of the time? You know, like, that's the other annoying thing where it's like, oh, I'm okay with them being black or Asian or gay or a woman or whatever. But if it doesn't add to the story, why do it? And it's like, because that's how people look. That's how modern society looks. Yeah. They don't have to justify it. Like, what I liked about John Cho, he was in a lot of different TV shows, and he talks about this in his casting too, is that he tries to go for roles that don't put Asian people in either a bad light or a stereotypical light. And you see that in the selection. Like, he plays, like, I remember like Sleepy Hollow and other shows like that. He plays like a cop. He usually plays characters who, yes, they're Asian and he wants them to be Asian, but they're not necessarily, that's not like, they don't eat like with chopsticks all the time, or they don't like, you know, they don't have an episode dedicated to like Lunar New Year or something like that. Like, there are, he plays Americans, right? Yeah. Like, to normalize, like, hey, we're here too. And just because I'm Asian doesn't mean we have to lean into that. Shouldn't be any justification. You don't see any justification for, again, like, why did the cast have to be white? Friends, right?
That's the truth.
Did you guys have any other thoughts regarding, you know, the shows that we grew up with that, you know, spoke a lot to our hearts?
I mean, Sean took my obligatory mention of Power Rangers, so I think I'm good.
Oh, I forgot to say, remember like Time Force? Time Force had 2 Asian men. That was a big deal to me at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
That's true. It did have a lot. Yeah. I mean, didn't In Space have, isn't in? Wait.
It had the one Asian guy, yes, which they had ever since Adam, which also was pretty awesome. Adam was
pretty awesome.
Yeah. Johnny Young Bosch is still awesome.
Trini and Adam, for sure.
Yeah. Again, didn't lean too much into stereotypes except for Billy. That was it. But
they kind of leaned into it with Zach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did. They absolutely did.
I mean, they did, but
he was awesome.
He was cool.
Yeah. He had a freaking axe out of all of them. Oh, I got this sword. Cool. I got this battle axe that turns into a fucking rifle.
Yeah, that was a cool weapon.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Power Rangers was groundbreaking. All, you know, as it kept going on too. I think they wanted it that way to.
Oh yeah.
You know,
by design.
For kids to see themselves.
It makes sense. It's based off of Japanese.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fucked up if they were like not wanting to be papers, stealing content from another culture, but trying to whitewash the shit out of it.
Yeah, that would have been pretty bad.
That would have been awful. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Still, I did want to say that you never know what, like, even if a show does fail, you never know who's going to impact, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
even if it's like a little show that runs for a season, but still, like encourages somebody, or like, how do you say, inspire someone to create or do something different with their life. It's influential. So,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I feel that very strong with Fresh Off the Boat, because like, yeah, I missed it growing up, but like seeing it later now, where I am in life and like what I understand, I like my identity and stuff like that. Like seeing it, I appreciate it so much more now. I'm like, yeah, like I'm so glad that this was made, and can see definitely the influences and what it allowed other people to do too. So I'm definitely grateful for that.
Absolutely. Although first season was a little guilty of whitewashing a few bits, like the influence on Eddie Huang's life. I'm thinking specifically, I was still very annoyed at when they changed the story about his first NWA concert into his first Beastie Boys concert, and I'm like, why did you do that? It's like kind of negates the whole like. It would have been more powerful if they kept it as how it was in his memoir, because you know, Asian television definitely wouldn't be where it is now without, you know, all the black family centric shows that preceded it. Right. So
yeah, I mean, Fresh Off the Boat like was there so that like Kim's Convenience like could exist.
That's true.
And like Kim's Convenience also suffered from similar like directional things later on, and that's why it ends up getting canceled.
See, that's why I didn't want to watch the last season, because I'm scared to watch it and be disappointed. Is that what happened?
Like all of it is great. It's just that, I mean, there were disagreements and stuff like that between the staff and the actors and stuff like that, and what direction they wanted the show to go. But like that aside, even though they weren't able to get what they wanted across, I still think what they got across was great. Same thing with like Fresh Off the Boat. Like even though that got changed and things got whitewashed, it was still a great piece of history, really, to be there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. At worst, it's a proof of concept that you can have a great show like this about an Asian family. You know. So let's have some more. Let's make some more, right?
Yeah.
Was there a show you grew up with that you felt was groundbreaking? Leave it in the comments. Thanks for tuning in to Geeks Represent. If you enjoyed this discussion, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts can be found. If you want to add to this discussion, visit geeksrepresent.com. Thanks for listening and sharing with your friends.